Welcome back, fiber friends, to another episode of the Wool to Gold podcast. My name is Brian, I'm your host, and on this podcast we talk about everything yarn and fiber arts related. Today I am going to jump right into the episode because it is a little bit more of an educational episode, so I kind of want to cut to the point. But first things first, we are just going to touch base about some WIPs that I have. So I did just want to show off my progress that I've been making on what is now going to be, as we talked about in the last episode, more of a sweater as opposed to just a pair of sleeves. I finished one of my sleeves. I am going to make a proper ribbed cuff to put on this side, and I'm making some progress on the other side. Once that's done, I'll work the rest of the body with literally whatever yarn that I have left over. And then this is what I have left over before I do the ribbing. Once I have the leftovers from this and this, we'll see if we have enough to do like an every other color ribbing on the bottom of this. I don't know, that's kind of an ideal situation. It's definitely a stretch because if you've been here for a while, you know I'm more of a crocheter. All of my WIPs right now are crochet. I do have some finished objects for you guys as well that are really, really killer. Don't hold it against me, but I did finish a yarn and then entirely use all of that yarn before I got to show it off here. I did show it off on my TikTok and my Instagram, so if you don't already follow me there, go check that out. And if you are rolling with the chaos here, if you like what I'm doing here, don't forget to give me a follow. So speaking of, I do want to show off that it's still wet, so don't come at me, okay? It's still damp. I have not even properly blocked it out. But this is I said I was going to use this leftover Barreco alpaca and wool yarn. And then I gave this hat spots with this hand-spun boucle and lock spun yarn. Somewhere on this hat, there is a cute little star bead. I'm going to see if I can find it for you guys. Because I think, there it is. I think that's just the piece de resistance, is that this was a beaded boucle yarn. It was my first boucle, so it wasn't perfect, but this hat is dopamine dressing. This is going to make me so happy to wear on cold winter days, which I have been really battling the seasonal depression, fists a-blazing, and it's, we're doing our best. This is what's left over of the boucle. I sent the rest of the handspun that I had left over of what I held with this, which was a 2-ply lock spin that I did. I sent the rest of that with my last order that I got from my yarn shop. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for placing an order with me. I really appreciate it. She fell in love with this yarn specifically and was very remiss to see that it wasn't available on my shop. And I did tell her, unfortunately, it's already in a project. It's a little late, but I did send her part of the leftovers because I just really appreciated it. She had fallen in love with that yarn and she placed an order with me anyway. And so I got to send out a little bit of squishy mail. So thank you again for that. I did want to show off also another FO. So this is my finished skein of Drysdale. So I'm spinning this Drysdale fiber on my shaft on a 10.5:1 ratio. It's Z-twist. It's a 3-ply. And again, it's Drysdale fiber that I got from Nouveau. I really like the especially rare and conservation wools that Nouveau stocks. I think she does cool dyes and things like that. And I'm spinning this for the Stitches and Starlight spin-along. I think it's not a spin-along, it's a make-along in general. So all crafts are welcome, whether you are a crocheter or a knitter. And it's a very loosey-goosey make-along, so there's not a lot of rules, which is what really appealed to me about this. I am really pleased that I already finished one whole skein of the Drysdale, so I really only have, 4, 8, 12. I have 12 ounces left, which is still a fair amount. Listen, I'm only a quarter of the way done, but I'm really, really happy with my progress. I did put something else on my shack matchless, so I'm gonna lean, and you can probably see, there she is, and the bat that I'm spinning is right there. It looks just gray and white, but it's also a little bit of red. I'm gonna go grab it. It's got this maroon color. It's from Hidden Pastures Luxury Fiber Farm. It is a fine wool and Angora blend. It's so squishy. Oh, and there's also CVM, which is also what drew me to this. The Angora and the CVM is kind of what pulled me in. I already have a colorway name for the finished skein. I'm not going to reveal that just yet until the skein is finished. But I did put this on my shack after my Drysdale spin because I just felt like I needed a little like soft and squishy palette cleanser in between kind of definitely a coarser spin. I have to say the Drysdale was definitely more of a pleasure to spin than I thought it was going to be because Drysdale is definitely a coarser fiber. But it wasn't the worst thing I've ever spun. I'll keep the worst thing I ever spun to myself for now. I think I've mentioned it in previous videos, and if you can go back and find it, then you'll be privy to that information. But I don't like to turn people off of any breeds because there are a lot of like coarser breeds that I really, really, really love spinning. Speaking of, one of those breeds that definitely has more of a medium hand that I did start spinning on Benny, my Lendrum, is a little bit of this roving right here. It looks like just any old brown roving to you probably, but this is some East Frisian roving. East Frisians are really cool because they are one of very few truly tri-purpose breeds. So they're raised for meat, they're raised for dairy, and they're raised for their fiber. And they're considered valuable in all three assets. It's very difficult to get a true tri-purpose sheep, especially because genetics just don't lend themselves to having like great fiber and like the best meat and being heavy dairy producers, because you really have to like give more of the energy to one of those things to make it really great. But the East Frisian does a pretty good job. I have to say the fiber is definitely a medium hand. That being said, I don't think that it doesn't have a scratch factor at all. It kind of reminds me of a slightly higher micron Romney. That is what I would compare it to. And so what I'm actually doing is I'm spinning about 1 ounce of this East Frisian, and this is going to be from Wellspring Farms, if I didn't mention that before. So this East Frisian, I'm spinning about 1 ounce of it on Benny just by itself, and then I'm going to be blending about, what did I set aside? About 0.83 ounces of this I'm going to blend with about 10 grams of Sorry Silk that I also have from Hidden Pastures that I have not dug out of my fiber stash because I'm lazy and I'm being transparent. I just have not wanted to dig through the box that it's in because it's at the very bottom of my fiber stash. Until I have the 1 ounce spun, I don't think that I'm going to pull out that 10 gram sample to blend with the rest of it. But I just want to see how a little bit of silk affects both the sort of drape of the East Frisian and the softness factor. I think that it could have some real blending potential in terms of, making some interesting bats and things like that. So I want to mess around and play with this a little bit, and that's what's on Benny this week. Of course, I am still diligently working on my drop spindle. I have a little bit of Coopworth on the drop spindle right now. I did pull out 2 more breed samples to dive into now that we're done with the Cheviot and the, what was I spinning? The North Ronaldsay. Yeah, those were our last 2 breed samples. So the next one that we're working on is, I believe it's pronounced just Lynn. These are from the Welsh breed pack. And then the other sample that I pulled out from that same pack is going to be Kerry Hill. I'm really curious to see how this Kerry Hill ends up, actually spinning up. And if I like it, I might see if I can source some here in the US. And then I'm not I'm not going to comment too much on this project because it is not finished. It's still very much in progress. But I crocheted this hood. I made these pom-poms. As you can see, I put the extra ones on my basket back here. It's supposed to look like moss, and what I decided, since some of the pom-poms are just a little heavy for the hood, I think with enough trimming, actually, not even I think, I am very, very confident, because I'm gay and I think I can do anything. I'm very confident that I can trim these pom-poms down so that they have kind of more of a flat mossy look. Mind you, they're still going to be raised and puffy because they're pom-poms. But I think that with enough trimming, I think this will lighten this up enough that it'll look and fall a little bit more naturally and pleasantly in the way that I want it to, and I will have my dream moss hood. I have not given up on this dream. After I attached the pom-poms, I got a little bit disheartened because I tried it on and I was like, they feel really heavy, and I feel like it's just not wearable enough. Now, mind you, this is definitely a design that I'm going for like the Comme des Garçons weird with this, okay? So it's supposed to be wearable to a point. You know, if you know, you know. I love Comme des Garçons. I, much like many other people, just fell in love with a few garments from them, and they haunt me. They haunt my memories. I would like to make some tabby mittens at some point. I think that's a project that I'd like to cast on pretty soon. But in the background of some other things, I am going to be just like trimming away on these pom-poms with my tiny scissors. I gave myself a little bit of a welt when I was trimming them the first time, so I kind of want to go easy and move kind of slowly or slower on this project. But because last time we checked in a week ago, none of this existed. A lot of these things, as you probably have noticed, if you've been following along for a while, did not exist. We had a little bit of a creativity boom last week, which was good and well needed. It's warm too. It definitely needs some trimming. But anyway, those are all of our works in progress and finished objects. I do have some Christmas gifts that I also finished last week. However, I've already wrapped those up and put those under the tree for my family. So we're gonna just let sleeping dogs lie on that one. Oh, and actually, you know what? This is also not something that I've put on a wheel yet, clearly, because it's sitting in front of me in a pile. However, I looked up some techniques on taking apart silk caps, right? And I went in very, very confident, going in to peel off the first layer, and it just didn't go the way that I expected. However, the fun thing about fiber is I just kind of rolled with it. I don't know. I think that with fiber, there's only so much you can mess up. You know what I mean? And I'm not afraid to play because it's fiber art. It's called art for a reason. So yeah, this silk cap, I couldn't pull it off in sheets necessarily, but I did pull it off. I'm not going to take this whole thing apart, and it's getting on my face and on my nose. However, it's a big floof. This is all one consecutive piece, essentially. And yeah, I'm gonna spin from this. I feel pretty confident in the way that I pre-drafted this, that I can make something pretty out of this. And I just think, look, I've just had so much fun, like, throwing this around. I'm not gonna lie. I think this is just beautiful all by itself. I wish there was a way I could just wear this. Maybe I'll find a way that I can just wear this. I don't know. I love this. I'm obsessed. And it's really warm. When it sits on my lap, it feels like there's an animal sitting on me. I just love playing with fiber. I wanted to share this with you guys because sometimes fiber experiments don't go the way we expect, right? Again, I looked up some videos on how to do this first. A lot of videos, because I knew that I could really hurt myself taking apart silk caps. If you aren't familiar, silk caps are beautiful and very tempting. However, if you draft them incorrectly or frankly just too quickly, so you're trying to rip them apart or just like draft it the way you would other fibers, you can like cut yourself. You can really hurt yourself. As I'm messing with this, it's little pieces of the silk are sort of like catching on my hands because they're a little bit dry because it's wintertime here in the state of New Jersey, and so it's dry and it's cold. And so where it catches on your hands are to where it's gonna like cut you essentially if you move or like pull it apart too quickly. So just, you know, be careful when you're working with silk caps. Look it up before you go in. So if you clicked on this video, you are probably looking to purchase a spinning wheel, and that is a really wonderful thing. Welcome to the club. Maybe you've already started drop spindling. That's rad. You're already a spinner. You have a jump on it. But as you've probably noticed, spinning wheels are expensive. A lot of them are an investment, and I am here to talk to you about all of the different variables that you need to consider before purchasing a spinning wheel. So one thing that's going to be a little bit different about this video compared to some other videos that are available to you on YouTube when it comes to choosing a spinning wheel is that I am not promoting any specific brand. In fact, I am going to go almost the entire episode until the very end when I tell you about my spinning wheels, talking about any brands. We're just not even going to approach that specific perspective. I'm not going to go spinning wheel by spinning wheel and talk to you about pros and cons about each of them. Instead, I am literally just going to break down the different variables that I think are really worth considering before you lay down any amount of money for a spinning wheel, whether that is, $100 on a used spinning wheel off of eBay. That's kind of a shot in the dark, or, a $1,500 plus spinning wheel that is an antique or, is the top of the line creme de la creme designed for you spinning wheel. So how are we going to break down this video? What I'm going to talk about first is essentially price, because I think that's what a lot of people start with when they start considering spinning wheels. Now, at the end of the day, a lot of spinning wheels are just what a lot of people consider, including myself, expensive. And so it really comes down to how much time you're willing to invest in saving for that spinning wheel and, what your financial means allow for. In this price consideration, there are so many different variables that affect it, and that's why we're going to use that as sort of like an umbrella starting point. Now, what affects the price of a spinning wheel? We're going to talk about things like getting an antique spinning wheel, a new spinning wheel, or buying used like I did, and how to go about getting a used spinning wheel in a way that you're not going to end up with a spinning wheel you're disappointed in. Another thing that affects the price of spinning wheel is going to be literally just the type of spinning wheel that it is, its physical build. So is it a Saxony? Is it a castle style? How much space does it take up? How many resources go into actually building the wheel? Is it an e-spinner? Does it have treadles? And at the end of the day, you really need to consider what kind of yarn are you looking to make. So each of these wheels will have a range of yarns that it is able to make. And that range of yarns may or may not be more or less appealing to you. So if you're only looking to make yarns that mimic commercially spun yarns, you only want to spin something consistent. You're really not interested in any of the textured art yarns, the JC Boggs type yarns of the world. Those just do not call to you. That is totally fine. You are going to be looking at a very different spinning wheel than somebody who is really maybe only interested in doing really massive super coils or making very specific types of yarns for art weaving and things like that. We're going to break down how your spinner's journey will actually affect, the type of wheel you buy, and therefore the types of price ranges that you're looking at. And then, of course, one other variable that's going to affect, what type of wheel you can buy, and therefore the price of your wheel is going to be physical limitations. So there are some people who don't have legs and cannot treadle. An e-spinner is definitely going to be what you're looking towards, and there are super affordable e-spinners on the market, and then there are, thousands and thousands of dollars of investment types of e-spinners on the market as well. There are also physical limitations like my own, where I just get a little bit of hip pain. Some people have knee pain, and there are going to be different types of spinning wheels that are going to be more or less comfortable for you. Now, one thing that I'm going to recommend throughout the video is that you try the spinning wheel that you want to buy before you buy it. Try before you buy mindset. Now, there's a few different ways you can go about this. So why do I swear by the try before you buy mindset? One of those reasons is because I was someone who was very convinced that I was going to prefer one wheel above another wheel. And then I got to try a lot of different wheels at multiple fiber festivals. So I attend Maryland Sheep and Wool. I attend New York Sheep and Wool, more commonly called Rhinebeck. And I also have visited a lot of local spinning shops near me. I'm pretty lucky in that I have access to the upstate New York, so the New York Fiber Shed and the New Jersey Fiber Shed, as well as the Pennsylvania Fiber Shed. And these are all pretty strong states, not as strong as, say, Maryland, but really strong states when it comes to fiber shed, especially New York. And so there are some shops that are spinner shops. They have fiber and they sell wheels. And I've also visited those places. A lot of them will bring out wheels if you want to try them, to try out spinning and see which one is more comfortable for you. Any responsible wheel seller will let you try the wheel before you buy it. And I really think that's something to remember. And it's something to remember when you buy used as well. But again, we'll touch upon that a little bit later. Continuing as to what I was saying, essentially, I thought I wanted to buy one brand of wheel, and then after trying that wheel, I found out it actually really exacerbated my hip pain in a way that was very, very unexpected. And then, lo and behold, a wheel that people generally don't recommend for first-time spinners ended up being my favorite wheel. This is why I recommend that people try before they buy. If there are fiber festivals near you, if there's anyone who teaches spinning lessons near you, anyone who, owns a fiber farm, if they spin, I'm sure they're willing to teach lessons. People like myself teach lessons. There are lots of ways to get your hands on a spinning wheel and give it a try before you buy it. And that is a really great way to see if it will or will not exacerbate any physical limitations that you might have, whether that be a chronic pain or just a disability. And again, this will influence the price of wheel that you might have to purchase. Based on this, we're back at price. We're back at price as the overarching theme of, what is dictating which spinning wheel we're going to buy, right? We're going to be tempted, obviously, by going with a used option. I did. So obviously you can buy a spinning wheel new from a seller or directly from a website. Sometimes you can save money on a spinning wheel by buying it new but not put together from the website, from the seller. However, for some people, that is also just a really stressful endeavor. I am not a fan, a lot of the times, of putting together like IKEA furniture and things like that. So if that really stresses you out, maybe that buying new is maybe not the option for you because, the money that you would save by buying it not put together is just not worth it. So if you're going to buy a used spinning wheel, there are a few different places that I would recommend that you look before you look somewhere like eBay or sellers like that, where you are not going to get to interact with the product in person before you buy it or bring it home to you. Now, there are some exceptions to this, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But essentially, I really recommend that if you're going to try to buy a spinning wheel used, that you buy it from a platform where you get to interact with the seller and buy it like in person. So you can actually sit down at the spinning wheel and try it before you bring it home. Because what you don't want to end up with is a spinning wheel shaped object. Or alternatively, you don't want to end up with something where you are a brand new spinner and it's a working spinning wheel, but you don't know what part is missing or what needs to be replaced in order to make it work. And with just a little bit more, line of questioning, like, oh, does anything need to be replaced on the spinning wheel before I go home with it? And again, sitting down and making sure that you can actually spin some semblance of yarn on it before you go home will guarantee that you don't come home with a dud wheel. In both cases, I knew that I was getting wheels from really reliable sellers. So again, I purchased my wheels off of Facebook Marketplace. One of them I bought directly from a seller from that brand. And so I knew getting into it that it was going to be a pretty upstanding and professional interaction. She just had too many wheels and she was like, I need to get rid of some of my older wheels because I'm a seller and I just have so many in my house. And I was like, that makes sense. I still asked her if there was anything that needed to be replaced. And in fact, she said no, but here are a bunch of extra drive bands and some extra parts just in case anything does need to be replaced in the near future. And here is what has been replaced on the wheel in the past. Now, that type of transparency is definitely like a green flag type of thing for me. Again, I had spun on an e-spinner before, and I knew how a spinning wheel worked, and so I sat down at the wheel and I was able to spin a little bit of yarn. Not good yarn, but I was able to spin a little bit of yarn, and I was like, okay, I'm coming home with something that works, and that was rad. In the other case, I was buying it from somebody who was not a seller, but was a member of the Weavers and Spinners Guild. Now, I'm not saying there are people like in the guild who wouldn't sell you a dud wheel. Like, I am sure that there are some not so good people in guilds. I'm just saying, though, because they are like representing their craft and their art, a lot of the times if you're buying from somebody who is a guild member or directly from a guild in terms of used equipment, you're going to get somebody who is going to be very, very transparent with you about what is missing about the wheel or what might be wrong with it. In this other case, nothing was wrong with the wheel. I also got extra replacement parts. I got a bunch of extra fiber thrown in and some extra tools. It was a really wonderful interaction. And so as risky as buying, a used wheel on somewhere like Facebook Marketplace can be, I really think that if you do your due diligence, it can be really, really rewarding, because I got my wheels for such an affordable price. Both cases, I really think I got them for a song, especially compared to what it would have cost me if I bought them brand new. I was essentially able to buy 2 wheels for the cost of buying 1 brand new spinning wheel, because little bit about me, I had been saving up for over a year for a spinning wheel, because again, they're really expensive, and I have other things that I'm also saving up for. I'm trying to save for a house. Now I run kind of a little bit of a small business with my art, so I have other investments that I need to be making. So I saved for a really long time, and I took a lot of consideration and thought before I decided on which spinning wheel I was going to get and how I was going to go about getting it. There's also the fact that if it's a used wheel, a lot of people are like, well, I'm worried that, with the wear and tear, it's not going to be in working order, yada yada. I have to say, in a lot of cases, most of the time, spinners are pretty good about taking care of their equipment. That is not always the case. I will not overgeneralize about the community. However, if you oil your spinning wheel regularly, you dust it down, you do what you're supposed to, spinning wheels should last you an entire lifetime. I mean, at least in my humble opinion, they should last you, your entire lifetime. It is an investment. It is a tool. A lot of them are still made, by like small crafters and woodworkers and things like that. And so a lot of them just hold up very well over the years. That being said, a lot of spinning wheels also hold their value, which also means that if you're buying used, you are going to get a more affordable wheel. However, it's still not going to be cheap. You know what I mean. It's not going to be an under $100 investment. Now, there are some used spinning wheels that will run you $100, $200, $300. But that brings us to the next conversation we're going to talk about, which is we're going to talk about just different types of spinning wheels, antiques, pros and cons of antique spinning wheels, the different styles of spinning wheels, and we're also going to talk about like the spinner's journey and what kind of yarn you are looking to spin. So first things first, a quick note on antique wheels. Now, mind you, I'm not an antique wheel owner. It is not my roundhouse. If you are interested in things like that, I'm going to recommend the Jillian Eve channel. That is a really, really great place to start. Evie is a wonderful resource on older wheels. Go check out her content. I am not your man. If you are here for the antique wheels, I'm so sorry. I'm just not your guy. And one of the reasons is because antique wheels, in my opinion, can just really be, it's kind of a shot in the dark. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. A lot of the times they can be either in very good working order or missing a lot of parts. And the thing about antique wheels is if those wheel makers don't exist anymore, then there is no one to make these replacement parts for you. You might have to source out a woodworker or a specific type of company to remake a wheel part for you. Now, some people are real historical buffs, and that's what their vested interest is in when it comes to spinning. And again, that's rad. There are other resources for you. However, I just find that was too much of an investment for me. I wanted to spin yarn as soon as possible, and I didn't want to have to wait a ton of time for my wheel to be in working order. I wanted the hobby to be spinning yarn, not the spinning wheel, if that makes sense. So that is my one warning about antique wheels. While they can look beautiful, if you are a beginner spinner and you have dreams of making all of these different types of yarns, antique wheels are probably not for you either, because antique wheels can usually only spin a pretty limited range of yarns because, you don't have the interchangeable whirls and things like that you have on a more modern wheel. Now, if you like the look of the antique wheel, but you don't want the headache of, having to rebuild the wheel, what I have for you is Saxony type wheels. So I only own castle type wheels. I'm not a huge fan of Saxony type wheels, but there is no doubt about the fact that Saxony type wheels are beautiful. They are the wheels of fairy tales. They are absolutely stunning to look at. And a lot of the times they are well loved by a ton of spinners because, frankly, they're just a little bit less work. So you don't have to treadle as much with a Saxony type wheel. And the main difference between a Saxony and a castle style wheel, which I'll insert pictures of both of them right here, is, as you can see with the Saxony type wheel, the wheel and the flyer are kind of horizontal from each other. Whereas with a castle type wheel, the wheel is down at the bottom and the flyer is up at the top, kind of like a castle. I don't know. I think that's why it's called a castle type wheel. I'm actually not really sure. So if you're a history buff, if you know why it's called a castle type wheel, tell me in the comments. Correct me, please, if I'm wrong, because we're all still learning. But you might have a strong preference on which type of wheel that you get. That is totally up to you. Some people aesthetically prefer the Saxony type wheel, and some people, like myself, really prefer the castle type wheels for a few reasons. So they are a little bit more compact, and they are also, in a lot of cases, a bit easier to move around. So one of the things that I love about one of my wheels is that it can be folded up and just moved around freely, which I love. I can literally bring it to Central Park if I want to spin there for the day, and that is really, really rad. They also make carrying cases for some types of wheels. The gist of it is that there are pros and cons to both of these. You just need to figure out which you prefer. And moving on to one of the last things that I think is probably going to, affect the type of spinning wheel that you're going to buy. There are a few little sub points that we'll talk about at the end that will kind of tie into this. However, it is, what kind of yarn do you want to make? What kind of textiles are you looking to make? Depending on the types of fiber arts you do, and depending on just the general type of person you are, the kinds of clothes that you are looking to make, or the kinds of finished objects you are looking to make, the wheel that you want is going to differ. So some wheels are really good at making one type of yarn, essentially, or very good at making, a handful of yarns. Every spinning wheel has sort of a range of yarns that it's going to make on this, big spectrum of types of yarns. Now, if you are new to spinning, you might be like, what do you mean by different types of yarns? I'm going to insert a bunch of pictures here. So there are some hand spuns that are like this, that look almost commercially made, and there are some hand spuns that look like this, and they look super wild and textured, and you're like, how did they do that? And then there are also some hand spuns that look like this, which is kind of, a mix of the two. Different spinning wheels are either going to have the ability or not have the ability to make these types of yarns. Different spinning wheels will also have different ranges of yarns that they can make in terms of grist. So what is grist? It's the thickness of the yarn, essentially. So if you're only looking to make very, very heavyweight, super chunky yarn, the type of wheel, again, that you want to buy is going to be very different than the person who only wants to make cobweb lace yarn. If that is all they want to make, super consistent cobweb lace yarn, that is such a different wheel than this person over here. And again, that's okay. They're just two different considerations that, again, I really think you need to look into before you invest any amount of money in a spinning wheel. I think one of the most disappointing things that I hear is when someone DMs me or messages me and they're like, oh yeah, I really want to spin super textured art yarn, and they show me a spinning wheel that they got that I know is going to struggle when put to the test in terms of taking on things like super chunky bouclés or beaded work or things like that. Now, there are some wheels too that can be easily modified with the addition of certain parts, specifically changing the whirl or the flyer or the bobbin in order to make them better or worse at taking on certain types of projects like this. So some wheels have interchangeable parts and some wheels don't. Some wheels have more of a range of interchangeable parts and some don't. Both of the wheels that I have, I really like because I can change out the flyer, the bobbin, and the whirls in order to make them capable of essentially anything, which is really, really appealing to me. However, again, some people are not spinning yarn for the same reason I am. I'm very into wearable art. I like things that stand out, that are a little bit funky, as I'm sure you saw by some of my finished objects earlier. And a reminder that neither is better than the other. Again, this Fiber Arts channel is not about fiber policing. We're not about telling people what they need to do. You know, I'm just here to try to provide as much information as I can. Again, especially as somebody who a lot of my early Fiber Arts journey was me being like, oh, I'll never be a spinner. I'll never be like those crazy people who make their own yarn. How funny is that? Here I am. But essentially I had 2-3 years to spend constantly looking up different types of spinning wheels, all of the different pros and cons of different spinning wheels, all the reasons that you should consider this spinning wheel versus that spinning wheel versus, you know, all of these different things. And so these are just, again, the variables that I thought about before I decided on which type of used spinning wheel I was going to buy. So thank you so much, Fiber friends, for watching. I hope all the points that I made kind of made sense and the order that I went in kind of made sense. Probably didn't. My brain works in really weird ways, but I hope this saved some people some money, maybe, and made you think a little bit more about which spinning wheel you're actually going to buy before you buy it. Now, as I promised at the beginning of the video, I am going to tell you which spinning wheels I have. So I have a DT Lendrum and I have a Shacked Matchless single treadle. I really like both of these wheels for the reasons that I listed earlier in this video, which is essentially that they are capable of making a tremendous different types of yarns. I find them to be really comfortable for my body type. And I was very surprised by that because I thought I was going to like different wheels than those, frankly, when I got into trying different wheels. Ended up being surprised. So that's why I like sharing my perspective and the different factors that I ended up considering. You know, I had considered essentially everything but the fact that some wheels might end up exacerbating my hip pain and other wheels wouldn't when I started out trying wheels. So I think I had already made a fair amount of progress in, you know, nixing some that I just wasn't interested in, because you can be really overwhelmed by just all of the different options. One point too that I didn't really go in too much on in this video, because I don't think it should necessarily be a like deciding factor, but maybe it is for you, maybe it is a deciding factor, is the fact that some wheels are definitely more transportable than others, and some of them are definitely marketed as being, you know, like travel wheels. I do think it's worth considering that for some of those travel wheels, I really do think that the physical limitation comes in a little bit more. And what I mean by that is that you really have to consider height more than anything else, which I think is a physical limitation that people don't think about when they buy a spinning wheel. But there are definitely some spinning wheels that are better for very short people or very tall people. I think especially with very tall people, there are some spinning wheels that are going to be really, really uncomfortable because the orifice is just too low. Find that to be especially the case on a lot of these travel wheels. So just keep in mind, if you are a very tall person specifically looking for a travel wheel, please try it before you buy so you know that it's comfortable for you, because I, again, hate for you to spend all of that money on a beautiful travel wheel and not be able to bring it where you want to and spin comfortably. Already. So I truly think that is all the points that I wanted to cover in today's video. So thank you so much for watching. Again, I hope this helps somebody out there. Maybe, you know, figure out a little bit more about what kind of spinning wheel they are looking for. If you like this kind of content, please give me a like and a little comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I do have a TikTok and an Instagram, and I'll link those below as well. And I promise that if you are waiting for a yarn drop from my shop, I promise that I'm going to have a yarn drop sometime in January. I have a little bit of time off, and I think I'm going to get around to taking a bunch of pictures of all the skeins I've kind of been backlogging and all the crochet items that I've been backlogging made from Handspun, and I'll make them available on my site as soon as I can. So thank you again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.